Hello, hello. Hello, can you hear me? Hello, hello. I can't hear anything yet.
Hello.
Hello. How are you? We're experiencing some technical difficulties with Zoom, I think, right now.
Oh. I was scared. I think the meeting is not available.
I've been frantically trying to get this working. It looks like we've only got a few people on now. Probably several have tried and failed. I'm not sure what's going on, but hopefully we'll get this taken care of and be able to start in just a moment.
Yep.
All right, I see a few more people coming in, but it's having me manually admit everyone to the class, which is kind of annoying. I thought we had this taken care of last week. The only class that seems to be having this trouble is the Monday class. All right, so for those of you who got in, did you get in through the link in the calendar invite, through the link in the Slack channel, through the post on LinkedIn? Hello?
I joined through Slack channel link. Hello?
Okay, so the Slack channel link works, but the other link did not?
Did not.
Okay. Let me go ahead and Try that. Maybe they're trying something to that registration to handle the load, because of course Zoom has been swamped.
So Aaron, this is
Yes.
Lakshmikant.
Yes, Lakshmikant.
So how to register through Slack? Because I was trying to click on that link, and it is asking me for email ID and password. So when I entered email ID and password, and it is saying that the entered user is not registered with the group.
I'm not sure. I don't think there's a way to register directly through Slack. I know it added like the Zoom plugin. That's beyond my technical
Okay.
abilities. Even now,
So
when I'm trying to admit people manually to the meeting, like Noor, it's still not working right. So a few of you were able to get in. Lakshmikant, I know I tried to admit you several times to the meeting,
okay,
and
okay.
it took several tries before it worked. I assume you were logging in and out over again.
All right.
So what I will do, oops, I need to switch my account to get to my right calendar. This looks like it's just going to be a hiccup.
Yeah.
And hopefully it doesn't continue in the future.
Yeah, it's really frustrating.
Yeah, it is.
Do you have any idea why is this happening only on Java training course?
I don't know. It might happen on the other classes later this week.
I see.
All right. So you get to see some real-time debugging.
So is there any other way to join the group on Slack, or that is the only way?
No, well, I don't know. All right. Did you guys get an email from the calendar? I just sent an email from the calendar invite to try and give the updated registration link from Zoom. I don't know.
No, I haven't received
Okay.
anything.
All right. So in other news, how is everyone doing? How was your weekend? Surviving the crazy situation we're in?
Oh, it's weekend already?
Well, I mean, how was your weekend? It's
I don't know
Monday.
even. I don't even know if it passed or something.
Oh, no.
Lockdown in a way.
Okay.
Everything is moving to
All
my
right.
home.
Andre says he got the invite, so only the Slack link works. And I think I copied the Slack link from the email, which is really, oh no, I got that. I'll have to figure it out with Zoom. Anyway, it looks like we're probably just going to have a small group today.
Okay.
And it's probably those who join the Slack channel who are getting in, and everyone else may not make it. But let's go ahead and get started and try and salvage what we can of today's meeting, and hopefully next week will be much better. Let me ask a couple questions first. For instance, who feels, and you can either, since it's a small meeting today, you can respond out loud or just write in the chat, Slack or Zoom. Who would here is interested in the advanced class?
Me?
Use your name.
Oh, I'm Noor.
Okay, Noor. Anyone else, or is everyone else ready for the general large class?
I just wrote it on chat.
Okay.
So I wanted.
All right, let me check Slack as well.
Slack, sorry.
The Zoom chat?
Yeah.
Okay, so Hel, you're interested in the advanced class as well?
Yeah.
Okay. I may end up having to cut one of my other classes to make time because I can only do one class a day. Okay, Ahmed, also interested, and Lakshmi Kant. Andre, is that you saying that you're also interested in the advanced class?
Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like most of the people here are the most dedicated in the Slack channel, also ready for the advanced class. Okay, Parth also. Is anyone here interested in the beginner class instead? That might be easier to solve. Oh, we've got a few more people trickling in. All right, I need to get some automated form for getting this working, but I haven't been able to find the time to get that yet. Okay, Noor is interested in both.
Yes.
Okay. Do you want, are you just looking to participate in both, or do you feel you need the beginning class first and then the advanced class after that?
I think I need the beginning course first because I might have
Okay.
missed many of the Selenium methods, usages, and APIs.
Okay.
So the basics might cover those before I jump into advanced classes.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead and continue with starting from scratch, but we're going to go through at a fairly decent clip right now. And I might make for people who are new to programming or completely new to Selenium, or just new to Java, I might make a separate class. But we'll do this as you understand the basics of Java and Selenium, and you just want to go forward. And we'll kind of start from the basics. For instance, today, we're going to create our WebDriver. Someone mentioned last week about needing to set the WebDriver path. We'll cover that. And I don't know if we'll get everyone through because it's going to be different for everyone. But I'll walk through the basics of that. And then we'll jump into things like finding elements, inspecting the page in general, getting used to different locators like XPath, CSS, ID, and link text, things like that. And one thing I've decided to try and do is to, with each aspect of these different classes, I'm going to be working on the same project, which is my OneShore website, and specifically the registration training or the training registration page. So I'm going to go ahead and start that. What I really need is someone who can admit people to class so I don't keep getting distracted by people trickling in. Anyway, sorry for the rough start this morning, but let's try and make the most of it. So I've got a site up. It's not much of a site, but it's a start. And it's at training.oneshore.com. I was hoping to have this up over the weekend so that people could register and receive invitations. Anyway, so here's a list of the classes that I currently have. Test automation with Java and Selenium. That's today, now. The next feature I'm going to add is to be able to select a different time zone. Obviously, this only has the US time zones, but it's a start. I'll get India and Thailand and Spain and Egypt and wherever everyone else is. And I'll try and admit people as I'm going here. All right, so Tuesday is building web applications with Java, doing test-driven development, building web components in JavaScript. And you can see we've got some formatting issues here. I never said I was a great web designer. Wednesday, we have testing web services with Python. I know some of you, yes.
We don't see.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me stop share screen, desktop one. Okay, do you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, so you see the training.oneshore.com page. I'll paste this into the Slack channel. And into the Zoom chat. All right, so here's the web page. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to write a test that opens this page and, you know, checks the title. So let's go ahead and start. And I'm going to review here. I've got some examples here, and I'll just leave this aside. But I'm going to start from scratch just for review. And so I'm going to create a new project in Intellij IDEA. I encourage you guys to follow along. Open your IDE, whether it's Intellij, Eclipse, Emacs, Vim, whatever you use. Hopefully we can work together, but if you use Intellij, you'll see what I'm seeing. I have dark mode enabled. So I want to create a new project. I want to create a new Maven project. All right, and then I'm going to call this Oneshore Training as the project name. Actually, I'll call it Oneshore Training Tests. And I'm going to click Finish on that. And it's going to take just a second to load, and you'll see it creates a Maven project. All right, I don't want that experimental thing going on. But anyway, ignore that warning message. I upgraded my JDK over the weekend, and it looks like it's complaining. So I have a Maven project, and if you remember from last week, Maven is a build and dependency management tool for Java. Anyone here familiar with Maven? Go ahead and just give me a yes or a thumbs up in the chat. I'm looking at the Zoom chat instead of the Slack, but so familiar with Maven, yes, or not familiar, let me know. So, okay, a bit from Andre, yes from Ahmed. What first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to specify my Java version for Maven. So I want to create the Maven, or I want to include the Maven compiler plugin. And this is just some boilerplate code. Maven, this pom.xml is, it defines the project. It defines how to build it, how to get the dependencies. So what I want is the Maven compiler plugin. And you can see it's going to autofill those things for me. That completed. And then I'm going to add a couple other things in here. I'm going to create some dependencies. And this is review for last week, or for those of you like Lakshmikant, it looks like it's fine. And then what I'll do is I'll post this pom.xml online so that those of you who don't want to try and type this yourself can go ahead and cut and paste that into your own project. So go ahead and create a new Maven project. And then I'm adding a dependency. This is going to auto find some of these. And the first thing I want is Selenium. Oh, I've got a bunch more meeting participants coming in.
Hey, Aaron, just a quick
Yes.
question.
Yes, go ahead.
Is it okay if we interrupt in the middle, or do you want us to list out all the questions and then ask in the end?
I would prefer that you post questions in either the Zoom or the Slack channel so it doesn't interrupt the flow, but go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Now I was just wondering, why did you added the plugin?
Because what I want to do is I want to be very explicit on what version of Java that I'm going to be using. So I'll show you in just a second what this will do. Because the Maven compiler plugin will allow me to set the configuration. So what I'm going to do is in this plugin, I'm going to set configuration, and there's several ways this can be set. But in the configuration, I want to say I'm using Java source version 8. You can see my JDK version is just version 14, but I want to make sure that essentially we're using the lowest common denominator, right? I might say I want to use Java 11 or 12 or whatever, but I'm going to stick with version 8 is the version of Java 1.8. That's kind of the baseline version of Java. So in the Maven compiler plugin, I'm specifying expect Java 8 source and build for Java 8. I could change this and I can build for Java 13 or whatever. So that's why. And the reason I do this explicitly is because there's different language features at different levels or at different language levels in Java, right? There's lambdas that are introduced in 8.
Right.
Interface methods were introduced in version 9 or 10. And all this has happened over the last couple of years, right? Just a few years ago, Java 8 was the highest level, and now they up the version number every 6 months, I think. So version inflation. But anyway, so that's why I add the Maven compiler plugin, because I'm going to use Maven to build, and I want to be explicit about all the details, just like I'm being explicit about the dependencies, every dependency I need in my test. Okay, so I'm adding 2 dependencies, the Selenium Java dependency and JUnit. JUnit is my test runner, and I'll use 4.12. Okay, so now I have a Maven pom.xml. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go on to GitHub, and I'm going to create a gist and share that with you guys. So those of you who are following along, can just cut and paste instead of trying to type that. So I'm going to create a file called pom.xml here in this gist. And here's my secret plan. I'm going to get you all to run tests against my website and get free testing. Muhaha. All right, so pasting the gist into Slack now and into the Zoom meeting. Where is my Slack URL? I can't find Slack. There we go. I'm going to put that over on the other screen here. All right. So let me know if you've got that, or if you need that pom.xml. All right, I need to juggle some more stuff here. Sadia's not getting let into the meeting for some reason, although I keep trying myself. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Aaron.
Okay, I muted myself and couldn't figure out how to get out of this cage I'd put myself in. All right, so we've got a Maven project. And for those of you who went through that last week, probably still have that example. I'm going to start by creating my first test. So in my project pane over here, you can see I have the folder source, test, Java. I also have source main Java and source main resources, but I want source test Java. So I'm going to create a new Java class, and I'm going to call this simple test. So I created this class simple test, and just to show you in the file system where I'm at, I'm going to go to temp one short training tests. And you can see here, I have the source folder. I have the pom.xml, the source folder, source test Java simple test. So it's really just a different view of my file system here. All right, now I'm going to create I've created this class, simple test. You can just type it out instead of letting your IDE fill in the details for you. I'm going to create a test method. So it's going to be public method. It's going to have a void return method, and I'm just going to call this open page. Actually, I'll just call it open home page. And then once I get this test running, I'll do the same thing. I'm going to create this as a project in GitHub so you can check out the entire source code from Git. And we will probably go through this next week, but I'll send instructions at the end of the day today for those of you who are watching and may have got lost or just want to get the code and follow along. That I will send you a link to the GitHub repository and how to use Git. Anyone here not familiar with using Git or GitHub? Feel free to respond in the chat. Okay, Vivek, does that mean you are familiar with Git or not? All right, so we're going to create our first test, and we're going to create a WebDriver instance. All right, and I'm just going to start with a new local Chromedriver. And then I'm going to, well, it says I still need to add a Maven dependency, which is kind of unusual. I have this dependency in my pom.xml, Selenium Java. Let's see, 3.14159. Can it resolve the symbol WebDriver? And it probably added it again. You can see, so added Selenium API instead of Selenium Java. Those are roughly equivalent. Selenium Java has some other things. All right, I'm having some trouble with my API or with my IDE. All right, backup plan.
Are you sure that you need API, the Selenium API?
Selenium API is included in the Selenium Java as a dependency on that. So no, I don't need that, but I tried to auto import that.
Okay, the auto import should have worked.
Yeah, it should have. I don't know why it's not. So what I did just now is I switched to another project. You can see it's virtually the same, except I have one more method. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to pretend I'm on the same one right here, even though this is called Learning Selenium Java. This is just something I set up previously. So I'm going to create a new Java class. I've already got one called Simple Test, so I guess I'll just bring this up. This was just something I did for testing earlier, for testing out my setup. So I have open page class, right? Now, if you have Chromedriver in your path, like I do, and I can go to a terminal and I can see that happening, right? If I type Chromedriver, it finds it and it starts Chromedriver. So it's in my path. If it's in your path, you don't need to specify it. But if it's not in your path, you do. And I think some people last week ran into that issue. All right, we've got another person. Arpita is trying to come into the meeting. Doesn't want to let her. Okay, so I have Chromedriver in my path. If you do brew install Chromedriver on a Mac, it'll probably set it up in your path. And it'll probably automatically start it. So for instance, I do brew services list, and it's going to show me that, okay, it doesn't show that I have a Chromedriver running, but I do. So let's take a step back and go to chromedriver.chromium.org. For those of you who haven't got this working, I'll paste the link here in Zoom and in Slack. So go to chromedriver.chromium.org. You can download Chromedriver. Now you need to check your Chrome version. Go to Chrome, About, Google Chrome, whatever. And mine's going to say version 80. So I actually don't want to get the most recent version because this says the current release. If you're using Chrome 81, download this one. If you're using Chrome 80, download this one. So I want this one. And you can see there are builds for Linux, Mac, and Windows. It's important to get the right Chromedriver version for your right Chrome browser version. So I would grab this one. And I can do Chromedriver -V, I think will give me version. Okay, so see, I've got Chromedriver 80. And it shows here's my path, user local bin, Chromedriver. But I'm going to pretend that I don't have it in my path for the sake of those who are following along at home who don't. So the first thing I want to do is I want to set this system property, Webdriver Chromedriver. And I'm going to set this to the proper path for Chromedriver. And I'll paste this into the chat. And by the way, I have these instructions here that I'll also show where to set that up. Here's the link for Chromedriver. Here's set Chromedriver in your path. And then now that we've got Chromedriver running, we want to open a web page. So I'm going to comment out all this stuff. And so I have a Chromedriver instance. I want to get a URL. So I'm going to go to this test page. And I want you guys to go to the test page as well, not to the actual page for now, because there's a few features on there that I want to demonstrate. So we want driver.get, oops. Oops. We want backtick. Slack is not being my friend today. Driver.get, and then this URL. training.oneshore.com/test.html. So you can see this is just a different version of the same page. Why, oh why will that not work? Well, forget about Slack, just look at my screen. Driver.get, and then what I want to do is I want to get the title and print the title out. So I call driver.get, pass in my URL. I call driver.getTitle with no arguments, no parameters, so just two parentheses closed, and I assign that to the value of this string title, and then I print out the title, system out print line with title as the argument. So this is my test, and I'm going to run it. And then what I'll do is I'll create a project in GitHub and share this code with you. Yeah, I've got a lot of junk in that title, don't I, Andre? Let me even see, what does it say there? Training, consulting, development, test automation. Whoa. That's SEO stuff there. The auto suggestions don't work for Noor. I don't get the group ID. That is a common problem, Noor. The Maven plugin for IntelliJ sometimes glitches. Sometimes it's just the network is slow, but sometimes you will need to cut and paste the actual code like group ID and artifact ID into your pom.xml, which is why I wanted to give everyone an example pom.xml that has everything set up. And now that I've got this test, you can see it open, oops, not that one, this one. It opened up a new page in Chrome. It says Chrome is being controlled by automated software. It detects that it's Selenium, which can be a challenge for those of you who are trying to illicitly screen scrape and automate applications that don't want you to, things like online retailers, airlines, and so forth, who don't want to share their prices or who don't want people to automate the process of purchasing. So sites can block Selenium is the takeaway from that. So we have this test page, which is going to have a less long title, I think. Let's see what the title is I got here. Okay, yeah, it just says OneShore training test page. Much more reasonable. All right, so let's go back to our simple test again. We've opened a page, we got the title, and we printed it out. That's a pretty good start, but let's do more than that. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to kill this window here, and I actually have to close that Chrome window as well. So the next thing I want to do is we want to make sure that our browser closes when we're done so that we don't have a whole bunch of windows open. So what we want to do is we want to call driver quit. That quits Webdriver and closes the browser. Driver close will close the browser. Let me illustrate this. If you do driver close and run this, it will close the browser, but it won't quit Chrome. It'll close the window, and then you'll still have Chrome open with no windows. So this is running. And I'll show you my taskbar. It's going to show another Chrome icon pop up in my taskbar. Here it goes. It's moving slow. See that pop up there on the right side? The window loads and it closes. Oh, it did shut down Chrome as well. It didn't used to do that. But driver quit is the one you want to use. Close will close down a single window.
Yeah, quit closes all the instances.
Yeah, quit closes all instances. That's a good way to put it. So we've got that. Sometimes, like for demonstration, we might not want to do driver quit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just comment that out, and I'll just move it to my bottom for when I want to do that, because I've got these other segments that I wanted to demonstrate. All right, so what other things can we do besides getting the title on the page? Well, we can get the page source, get the HTML for the page. So I'm going to
Aaron,
run.
can you show us like what is the title in the browser so that it is correctly fetching the same thing?
Yes, so the browser on this test page should say OneShore training test page.
No, if you can inspect and show it on the HTML console.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can do that as well. So what I did is I essentially went to View, Developer, Developer Tools in Chrome. This is going to be your friend for finding elements. So this is a good introduction to that. So you can see I go to my head. My title here is OneShore training test page. And it has all these other metadata things that are auto-generated for it. And then we've got some other things. We've got the different elements, and you can see as I move through here, let me move this down. As I move through and I highlight different elements, in the HTML source, it clicks on, or it highlights the individual element. If I click on here, it'll go to here. If I expand this and click on an individual list element, it will highlight that individual. So I'm highlighting the checkbox, I'm highlighting the label, I'm highlighting the schedule below that. So that's a good thing to know. The Chrome inspector is going to be your best friend when you're automating Selenium. It'll show you the elements, it'll show you the HTML source, it'll even give you these hints about where they're at. So let's hop back over. The next thing we want to do is we want to get the page source. So I'm going to go ahead and run this again. Let's see, I think I might have ran it already. No, I didn't. I'm going to run, it's going to get the title, and then it's going to get the page source. Again, no arguments to this, it just gets the current page. And then it will print out the HTML source here for the whole page. And you'll see this scroll down as it goes through. It opens my browser. It opens the training test page. And my test should be complete. And you can see all the HTML source, including here's the title, all the meta tags, and everything else in here. All right. I'm going to close this Chrome again. And the next thing we want to do is we want to see what else we can get on the whole page. So I'm going to open up my source again. We can get the page source. We can also get the URL. Driver.getCurrentURL. Oops. So we run this, and oh, it's not going to print it anyway. So let me stop this. That's not going to be helpful. Let me introduce another feature of IntelliJ, and that is to use the debugger. What I want to do is I want to stop right here on the URL, and I'm going to go ahead and add these others. The next thing I want to do is I want to find elements, right? I'm not going to show you how to do that right now. I'm going to put a breakpoint. So I go in the gutter next to my line number, and I click here on the side. You see where that is? Where it puts that red dot. That's a breakpoint. For those of you who haven't used the debugger, a breakpoint is where you can tell your program to run to and then stop there, break, and it will allow you to inspect your running code and step through it. So let's go ahead and do that. Rather than clicking the arrow for run up here, I'm going to click this little picture of a bug for debug. And what that's going to do is it's going to run it, it's going to attach the debugger, and then it's going to stop at my breakpoint and allow me to inspect. Mohammed, how to kill after driver close process in memory? You may have to either do it manually or bring up your Process Explorer or your, is that what they call it on Windows? But yeah, you essentially have to manually kill it. You could probably send a quick command via the API to a remote WebDriver as well, but I'm not going to get into that. Anyway, so here we are. We've got my WebDriver session. You can see my view looks a little bit different. I have this debugger section on the bottom. Yeah, you can do that, Noor. You can right-click on a browser to quit it manually. You can also, for instance, in the debugger, I can hit the stop button. Task manager, that's the other phrase for killing the process. Thank you, Arpita. All right, so we can see we stopped at this, and we stopped at my breakpoint here on line 22 on open page simple test. So this is the method, this is the class simple test method open page. We can see where we're at on line 22, and it even highlights it for us. Now I can go over here to source. I can look at source. If I hover over that, you can see, I can see the HTML source. Just like if I hover over title, I see my title, one short training test case. It shows me what the value of this thing is. If I go over here, it's going to show me the WebDriver instance. So it's a Chromedriver on Mac. So this is essentially the toString output of whatever object you hover over. And it shows that it has these elements down below in my debug tray here. So I have this, which is the class that's running, simple test. Driver, that's this Chromedriver on Mac, just like we saw here when I hovered over that. We have the title. I hover over the title, one short training test page. It's here. I can expand this and you can see the value and get all that. I think this is going to be the characters, right? So character 10 is going to be ASCII code 45 or something like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's do something easier, like 0, 1, 2, 3. All right. Let's not worry about that. The value, that's for low-level debugging. But anyway, mainly what we want to do is we want to see each of these elements. When you have nested classes, then you would expand that, makes sense. And then you have the source. Now, the one thing I don't have yet, I don't have this URL because I haven't executed this step. I stopped execution right before doing get current URL. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to step over this step. I'm going to execute this line of code. I can do some other things. I can step into it, which is going to step into the inner stuff. So it would actually jump into driver.getCurrentURL and you'll get lost. You can force it to step into, you can step out, or you can drop the frame, or just run. Like I could go to the next line or 2 lines down and I could run to cursor. But what I want to do is I just want to step over this command. So I'm going to execute line 22 is what it says in effect. And you can see it moved the highlighted text down to line 24 because line 23 is blank. So now we have the URL. It executed this get current URL. So I'm going to hover over URL. I said I'm going to hover over URL. It doesn't want to tell me. Oh, it is. It's highlighting it over here. URL is https://training1shore.com, and you can see it down below as well. It was too dark for me to see. Anyway, so that's how you can inspect elements in the debugger. And this isn't actually what I wanted to go into right now, but it's going to help us out because I wanted to show a breakpoint and show how you can get through each step. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let it run to end. So I'm going to just hit play over here to resume the program. It's going to get out of debug mode and just finish the program. Well, actually, let's step over this next command. So I talked about find element, and this is what I wanted to introduce. For those who are new, find element is how you find each thing on the page. If it's with HTML, it's like get element by ID or find element by ID. Find element is a Selenium command. It's a method on this Webdriver object. And we can actually click into this. Okay, so accept. So I'm accepting their license agreement through this. So now what I did when I did a command click onto driver find element, it actually goes to the source code here in Webdriver class. And you can see here, it's an abstract class, which means it doesn't actually, oh, it's an interface. It doesn't actually implement find element. It tells you, it describes what find element does. It's a method on Webdriver, and it takes one parameter, which is this by object. We can even inspect down into that. Oh, we can't declare that because we haven't loaded it yet. Anyway, so we're calling the find element, which will look for an element by tag name. By is a class, and now I can go into public abstract class by and see. I can go by ID. I'll expand this out. I can go by link text, partial link text, by name, tag name, XPath, class name, or CSS selector. There are a lot of different ways you can find an element, and you can see that in my test here. The first one I find by tag name, the H1. And so if I go to my console and view my source, I find, where's my H1? My H1 should say training test page right here. So I'm going to get this H1, and I'm going to step over. I'm on line 24, so I go back into my debugger view, and I step over line 24, which means it executes it. So line 24 has been executed. Now, driver find element didn't actually print out anything. It just found the element. It didn't do anything with it. It didn't click on it. It didn't type anything. It didn't get the content. Anyway, so I'll go ahead and hit resume, finish the test here, and show you what we can do with our find element. And you can see my test completed. And now I'm going to go ahead and uncomment my driver quick, because you can see I have this dangling Google Chrome here. I can right click or double tap in the case and quit that manually. So you can see a bunch of examples here. I have by tag name, by ID, by CSS selector. And these are all valid statements, but they don't do anything. That's like defining an element, right? You're essentially calling this initializer method on by, and it's going to return a new by ID. So we've got by ID, by name, by tag, by CSS, and by XPath. Any of you familiar with XPath? You got like body, div, table, tr, td, sub2, sub, bold, whatever, right? An XPath is a tree-like description of your HTML. It's for XML, hence XPath. And it's probably the most commonly used. You can use double slashes. Say I want to find the first instance of an HTML div tag, or the first instance of a bold tag, or the first instance of an input, or a button, any of those things. I can do that. I can also specify, for instance, I want to find the first instance of an input of type checkbox. And let's go ahead and use this example right now. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this up here. just delete those. So I want to do driver, find element, a single element. You can see there's also find elements, so I can find more than one.
Aaron, can you minimize the debugger?
What's that?
Can you minimize the debugger?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
There we go. That probably makes it easier to read, hey? All right, so find element. I wanted find element, not find elements. And what I want to do is I want to find it by, let's do by, oh yeah, I was doing by XPath. So input type equals checkbox. And you can see I've got a typo in there. And it's just a string. Now, there's a brand new Intellij plugin which allows you to, it's the Selenium plugin. I think we'll try and introduce that next week, but I'll give you a homework assignment to install that if you want to and explore. It just came out a couple weeks ago, so it's still kind of beta, but what it does is it allows you to have your tests be context aware for Selenium. Anyway, so I find this element by XPath of type checkbox. And what I want to do, and I propagated my there, and I want to find the first one. Yeah, absolute or relative XPath. So the double slash here means find the first match. It's a relative versus an absolute XPath. Sunil, thanks for bringing that up. All right, now what I want to do here is I then want to introduce a local variable. I'm going to call this checkbox. And it's of type web element. Find element, you can see, returns a web element object. Web element is a WebDriver concept. It essentially means some HTML component. So I'll just type that in. Web element. What's that?
At is required before type, right?
What is before type?
After double slash input, at type is at the symbol A at is required,
right? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're finding an element by XPath. So what we want to do is we're getting a checkbox, and then what I want to do is I want to print out the contents of that checkbox. So I'm going to system out, print line, checkbox, and then what I want to do is I want to get the text of that. And I'll go ahead and run this. I'll remove my debug point because I don't care about going through the debugger right now. Yeah, that was a typo, Sunil. I can't type and talk at the same time. There's another typo.
I'm doing it for you.
That's why you guys are here. If I have 10 or 50 people watching over my shoulder and telling me every time I do a typo, well, I'll never get anything done. But
don't worry, Aaron.
theoretically, you guys are just going to be my pair programmers and help me do this. So I open the page. It's executing the code here. We need to clean it up. We don't need to get the HTML source. Oh, I've got an error here. No such element. Unable to locate element. I did something wrong.
So Aaron, I have a suggestion.
Yeah. Yes.
So why don't we better find the element on the HTML console first, so that it gives us confirmation that we are searching the right element.
There are many ways to find the element. So I can check on this. I can inspect this element, right? And it'll give me a variety of ways. It almost always gives me something that's going to be not quite right. It's going to give me a CSS. But are you saying in the console I can do like
no,
this?
No, not the console. No, what? Not on the console. Can you yes? Can you do a Control F and paste the XPath which we have written, so that in case if it is correct, it points to the right element of the input tag. Yes, there it is. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So it's going to give me.
It will vary. So why don't you copy it once again?
What I want is type. Oh, another thing I need is quotes. That's what I forgot.
Correct.
Right.
It's single quotes.
It can be either single quote or double quote.
Yeah.
But anyway,
So
so
there
we
are
can see
5
we've
matches.
got the first checkbox. Yeah. And yeah, there's 5 matches. So again, I wanted
We'll
to
take
point
one.
out here, if I do sub 1, that's going to find the first one, as opposed to in most programming language, you would do sub 0. And then 2 will find the second one.
No, it's not fine.
No, it's not going to. I think that is that's because they're not next to each other. It's like doing
If you put
first to 5.
parentheses before and after,
What's that?
if you put parentheses before and after that, before double slash half bracket.
Like this? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Now
Okay.
we put it.
Okay.
Correct.
I wasn't even aware of that way of doing it. So there's a lot of ways of doing this. I actually use a plugin for my inspector, and I can do this here, and I can say I want to input, and I want to use XPath, and it will show each input. And then if I do type equals checkbox, it will show all 5 matches. I thought it used to highlight all of them. Anyway, that could be my CSS messing with that as well. All right, so that's the first introduction to finding an element by XPath. Now, while I say XPath is the most common, it's the least desirable method of finding an element. It's almost always better to use another method, because XPath is the least efficient and the most brittle. You can see it can get pretty complex. So what I want to do is, in this case, I would go back to look at my source. And I'm going to close all those windows so I don't get messed up, and bring this up. Oops. That's right. That's my automation window. So if I go to training1shore.com, test.html, and now my styling's messed up, and I inspect this element, there's one more thing I want to do. I want to show you how I can find an element. Now, I can find it by ID. This is the ID attribute, by the name attribute, by CSS, or by XML. So I'm just going to find an element by ID, and I want to enter my username. And then we'll call this the end of this class. I know it's been a rough start. So by ID, name, and then what I want to do then, so I want to change that from checkbox to name field. And let's clean all this stuff up. Oops, not the driver quit. We'll comment this stuff out as well. So now we have this web element. We can do several things. We can go to it. We can get the text, like I was talking about. We can get attributes. We can get the size of the object. We can get the tag name. But what we want to actually do is, we don't want to get something right now. What we want to do is we want to set the value, or send keys. So send keys works on a web element, and it will send the text. So I'm going to send my name here. And actually, I'm going to disable the driver quit as well. So what I've done is I've found an element by ID. The ID tag is the preferred way. If any element has an ID tag, you should use the ID. ID is going to be unique on each element. Should be. And it will be the most efficient way of finding elements, and the easiest way to find it if the layout changes. If the layout of a page changes, even if none of the content changes on the page, the XPath will very likely not be valid anymore, which is why you should not prefer XPath. All right, so I'm going to run this now. I'm finding an element. and I'm sending the keys, Aaron Evans, to type into this field. And this is, you know, the most basic thing you can do in Selenium. Well, not. Okay, Noor, we'll see you tomorrow. So now it's going to launch the browser again in another test, and this time I have it so it's not going to close down. It's moving a little slow. It's thinking about it, and there you go. It entered my name into that first field. Once you've figured out a few things, how to launch your browser, there's a whole bunch that can be done in that, and we'll talk more about the different options for doing that. So number one, you launch your browser. Number two, you find elements. And number three, you either inspect them, you get the text, you get the value, or whatever, or you interact with them. For instance, sending keys or clicking on a box, etc. And we'll go over some more details next week about how to do that. And I will send you this project so you can download and execute it locally on your own machine throughout the week. So I'll send you the project on GitHub with instructions on how to check it out and start it up. And I will send you a link to the Selenium Intellij IDEA plugin for you to mess with. And then next week, we'll go into more of ways that you can interact with elements. Clicking a checkbox, selecting an element from a select box, determining whether or not a checkbox is clicked, and so forth. Thank you guys for your patience. I know we had some technical difficulties today. I hope to get them ironed out. For Noor or Pita, whoever, I'll contact a few of you guys who have volunteered to help me assist with these technical difficulties and iron them out so this doesn't happen again next time. Apologize again for the technical difficulties and hope you all have a great day, night, or whatever, wherever you are. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, Aaron. Goodbye. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Great show, Aaron. Bye-bye.
Bye.